Hey everyone, and welcome. Every society tells a story about what it fears. And most of the time, it builds that story right into the stone and steel of its buildings. Today, we're going to explore that very architecture, what we're calling the human ledger, and unpack how our beliefs about justice, punishment, and healing get built into the world all around us. And really, this one idea, this single kind of uncomfortable truth, is at the heart of our whole conversation today. It suggests that when we run out of ideas for how to help someone, our first instinct is often to build a place to hide the problem. That's the thread we're going to be pulling on as we go through this. All right, so let's start with Act 1, the blueprint of fear. Because look, if we want to understand where justice might be heading, we first have to dig down and really excavate the foundations of the systems we have now. We have to look at the unspoken beliefs that shaped the very walls we've built. Right. Think about it. Prisons are so much more than just buildings. They're almost like a language written in concrete. What do we even count as harm? Who do we think deserves protection? And whose suffering do we just not see? The answers to all of that are written in stone and steel. They really reveal what a society can't tolerate, because maybe, just maybe, it doesn't understand it yet. Okay, so this timeline kind of shows how our whole idea of punishment has changed over time. It starts way back in ancient times, where punishment wasn't about revenge, but was seen as a ritual to fix some kind of cosmic imbalance. Then you get to the medieval era, and suddenly deviance becomes a sin. Justice shifts to enforcing religious rules. After that, the industrial age brings another huge pivot. Work is now the ultimate virtue, so punishment becomes a tool to create disciplined, productive workers. And finally, in the 20th century, we reframe crime as a pathology, a medical problem to be diagnosed, but often treated within those same old structures of control. But here's the thing. Across all those different eras, with all those different reasons, cosmic balance, God's will, economic output, psychological problems, there was one emotional current that just stayed constant. And that current is what really shaped the blueprint. And that brings us right here to the core truth of the system we've inherited. The justice systems we have today, well, they weren't really designed from the ground up to create lasting safety or to heal communities. They were designed to manage collective fear of chaos, fear of the unknown, and fear of anyone who didn't fit the mold. Which leads us directly into Act 2, the breaking point. Because that fear-based blueprint, passed down over centuries, eventually created a system that just became completely unsustainable, morally, financially, and emotionally. And we are living with the fallout of that design right now. Just to put a number on it, the scale of this crisis is, well, it's staggering. In the United States alone, you're looking at around 2.1 million people incarcerated. And that's not just a number on a slide. It represents a system operating at a scale that is totally unprecedented in all of human history. It's the direct result of policies built on that blueprint of fear. And these three things, they create this powerful self-perpetuating cycle. We warehouse trauma, basically punishing people for the ways their bodies and minds adapted to survive things no one should have had to go through. We criminalize poverty, confusing acts of survival with acts of defiance. And then we let political fear and public panic write our laws, which creates a system that only knows how to react, not how to prevent. And here's the hidden cost, the part we don't always talk about. A punitive environment doesn't just damage the people who are locked up. It creates a parallel trauma. It dysregulates, and by that I mean it destabilizes and overwhelms the nervous systems of the staff and officers who are exposed to constant stress and conflict. And that instability, it just ripples outward, affecting families and entire communities. The system, in the end, destabilizes everyone it touches. But here's the turn. The fact that this model is so unsustainable is actually forcing a change. The system is literally breaking under its own weight, and through those cracks, some light is started to get through. Its failures are creating the pressure we need to finally imagine something fundamentally different. And that brings us to our final act, the new paradigm. What we're seeing now is a global shift in thinking, a move away from the simple logic of punishment and toward a completely new framework of healing-centered justice. And this, right here, is the pivot point for the entire new way of thinking. It's such a simple change in the question we ask, but the implications are just huge. Asking what's wrong with you is basically a search for a defect in a person. It's all about blame. But when you ask, what happened to you? Well, that question searches for context. It opens the door to understanding how trauma, environment, and unmet needs can drive behavior.
So, what exactly is this new framework? Let's get a clear definition. Healing-centered justice doesn't excuse harmful actions, not at all. Instead, it puts them in context. It sees behavior as a symptom, a signal that something is deeply wrong in a person's life or their environment. The goal isn't revenge, it's to create real, lasting safety by actually fixing what's broken.
And look, this isn't just some vague idealistic concept. It has practical, structured steps. First, you stabilize. Yes, sometimes separation is necessary, but it's seen as a temporary pause, a way to regulate everyone's nervous system, not as a moral sentence. Second, you diagnose, not to slap a label on someone, but to actually map out what they really need. And finally, the ultimate goal is almost always reintegration, with a focus on repairing harm and rebuilding connection. And these principles, which are coming from breakthroughs happening all over the world, they represent this fundamental shift in logic. The old way of thinking believed that if you increase tension and fear, you'd create safety. This new model understands that safety actually grows from stability and connection. It sees human dignity as a practical tool for helping people regulate their behavior, and it sees accountability as a process of making things right, not just making people suffer.
This table really puts the two models side by side so you can see the difference. Just look at that first row, the core question. The punitive model asks, what rule was broken? And its whole goal is to inflict a consequence for something that happened in the past, usually through isolation. The healing model asks, what harm was done? And its goal is to create future safety by repairing that harm through connection and support. I mean, the difference is just night and day.
And this just makes it so clear that this isn't just an idea to talk about. This kind of transformation takes real commitment, especially from the people leading our institutions. The path from a system of punishment to a system of healing has to be built on the willingness of those with power to actually choose a different way forward. So, we'll leave you with this question to think about. The walls we build, in the end, are a mirror. They reflect not only what we're afraid of, but also our capacity for empathy, our understanding of why people do what they do, and our vision for what a better future could look like. What story do we want our system to tell about us? Thanks for joining us for this explainer.